thing when you're with someone and you love them and they know it and they love you and you know it, but it's a party and you're both talking to other people and you're laughing and shining and you look across the room and catch each other's eyes, but not because you're possessive or it's precisely sexual, but because that is your person in this life. And it's funny and sad, but only because this life will end, and it's the secret world that exists right there in public, unnoticed, that no one else knows about. It's sort of like how they say...
Frances Ha is a movie made in 2012, directed by Noah Baumbach, written by Baumbach himself and Greta Gerwig, the lead role of the movie as well as Baumbach's romantic partner. The movie tells the story of Frances, a 27-year-old professional dancer in New York who lives a vagrant and difficult life, but whose attitude remains positive and upbeat throughout the film. The way I see it, Frances Ha, in a lack of other words, is a story of youth, and youth's optimism, and youth's ability to go through a hard life with a smile on its face. And youth is clearly a dominant theme within the film.
It wasn't that long ago that I went here. I'm only 27.
Are you a lot older than Sophie?
No, we went to college together.
You seem older.
I'm a couple months older.
Like, a lot older. But less, like, grown up. It's weird. You have an older face.
There are several instances in which the qualities of youth are put on display. For example, although Frances has clear money and job issues, she refuses to let it control her life, and rather lives it playfully and with a spring in her step. When recounting all that happens to Frances, like her losing a role in a performance she would have loved to be in, losing her best friend, being too broke to pay her rent properly, and ending up compromising on her dream of becoming a famous dancer to become instead a small-time choreographer, one might think Frances would be in a state of utter despondency. But the film never assembles one focused on sadness. As Gerwig says herself,
Frances embodied it's very sad on the page. Like when you just read it, because I had friends of mine read it, and one of my friends said she just was like, I can't handle this, dude. Like, this is really dark.
But despite being so dark on paper, the movie remains upbeat and eccentric. One of the ways this youth and implicit happiness shines through this dark outline is through the movie's extensive use of wide or full shots, in which a character's entire body is present within the frame. This allows for the characters to express greater movement in the scene and be more expressive, and the effect is a general and recognizable feeling of youth and optimism pervading the film. And in this movie, that can succinctly be called a note to youth, references are constantly made to the French New Wave, a movement that took place in the 1960s France, in which young directors like François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard revolutionized films with novel ideas regarding cinema and the structure of movies, often using cinematographic techniques the public had never seen before, like jump cuts to amaze audiences and change film forever. Frances Ha is clearly admiring of the New Wave, and references to the Nouvelle Vague are abundant. References to the New Wave from the film include some of the soundtracks played during the course of the movie.
Want to see my room?
Sure.
Hey guys, this is Lindsay.
Hi.
Another, and more evident allusion to the New Wave is the movie's lack of color. This deviation from modern film is much like the New Wave's abandonment of the traditions of their times. However, although it is shot in black and white, the movie will clearly never pass off for an olden one to an uneducated audience. The quality of the recordings are clearly more reminiscent to our time than to the 1960s. A major difference between the films is the contrast and sharpness of the images. While Frances Ha has a soft feel to it, the poor quality cameras of the 1960s created sharper images with greater contrast between the light and the dark in the mise-en-scène. The use of black and white is much like how Baumbach wants to present youth, as paradoxically everlasting. Although technology becomes more advanced and image qualities grow better, the youth still faces the same problems every youth before it has faced. The use of a black and white color scheme reflects an internal quality of youth and the rhythm and tone of life, while the more refined images reflects continuation and progress through the decades, leaving us with this final message: youth is youth, and youth never changes. One of the most influential parts of the film is a scene in which Frances finds herself running through the streets of New York. Similar scenes are found in several New Wave films, including the end of Le Quatre Cents Coups and the end and the beginning of A Bout de Souffle. This, as mentioned before, is a clear reference to the French New Wave. The scene itself is an homage to a scene from Mauvais Song. But the act of running itself, and Frances Ha's continuous reference to older movies, represents something deeper. Running through the streets of Paris and New York represents the passage of time. The youth of the first generation runs and passes the torch of the youth to the second generation, the second to the third, and so on and so forth. Youth changes hands as it is passed down continually from one generation to another, but youth continues running.